oh, you because you're cheesy. Oh, the mouse is going to get you.
Welcome to Book Club.
Except instead of books, it's games.
Oh, and instead of a club, there's us two.
But the rest of the idea is 100% the same.
As every fortnight, we play one game solidly.
Then come here to talk about it.
And we want you to do the same.
All the games are retro.
Most of them are Sega.
Some of them we've never played.
Or, we've just forgotten we've played them.
Because we're old.
Because we're old! Because we're old.
Because we're old.
The Book Club has one central theme.
We play retro games for their quality.
Games that deserve to still be played.
There are some bonus old man memories to be had, but you don't need nostalgia if the game is awesome.
We're going to prove it.
In the Book Club.
Hello and welcome to Book Club. We are here for an exciting foray into the world of Konami. Does that excite you, Dibs Ahoy? Are you feeling the love? Yes.
Oh yeah, I love Konami.
Yeah, me too. And so we'll dive straight in and we'll talk about it. I'll just do a quick introduction with the effervescent, ever bubbly, ever wonderful Mr. Dibs Ahoy. Hello, sir. And of course, myself, less bubbly, more hairy, slightly fuzzy, Begil. There you go. It's actually on my LinkedIn profile, that description.
Oh, really?
Not had many job offers, unsurprisingly.
Yeah, I was going to say, do people just swipe right past it? So.
Apparently so, and it's a bit of a sore spot. So let's move on to the game.
Right.
What are we playing today?
We are playing this bad boy, the Konami 1993 classic Rocket Knight Adventures, and I'm holding it up to the camera just for those listening to the podcast.
No, you are holding up, and I'm noting it's super shiny. It's like looking straight to the sun. What's happened to that bad boy?
Well, yes, the sun is correct. So basically, I got this at a boot fair in like 1996, I would estimate, and it's obviously been sitting out somewhere for quite a while because it's quite yellow now.
Yeah.
If you look on the side, the logo kind of doesn't really have any color anymore.
No.
So it's seen some sun damage, but it is the copy that I've had since the 90s. So. Yeah,
it's a classic.
That's my bad boy.
And I think there's still plenty of game collectors out there that will be hearing that you've picked up anything of value at a boot fair and feeling very jealous because, of course, these days, you ain't finding nothing. But
that's the thing. I mean, it was amazing back when the PlayStation and all that came out, and everyone wanted shot of all their 16-bit stuff.
Yeah,
it's like me and Lars would just go around like, yes, please, we'll take all this stuff. It was like amazing.
I did see something on Instagram today actually, and some dude went to a boot fair. Sadly, I think it was in Spain, so not much use to us, but picked up a PS3 boxed for like some kind of ridiculous price of like 30 or 40 quid or whatever. That's like hundreds of pounds. Look pretty mint. Anyway, I'm just saying that to try and get it out of my head because I'm so jealous. Let's move to the game. Now, Rocket Knight Adventures, most people listening will have played it, but just as a little canter through what it actually is, what are we talking about? What kind of game is it?
Well, it's a side-scrolling platform bad boy, and you control this little character, Sparkster, who's like a possum or an opossum, whatever one it is. Apparently, there's no difference. I really have no idea. But he's a sword-wielding little creature in a suit of armor. It's kind of steampunk looking, as is quite a lot of bits of the game. But he's got like a rocket pack, so he flies around the place, and it's basically a whole lot of putting right what once went wrong. The story is actually quite deep, isn't it? It's like
he's got quite a lot of beef to sort out.
Yeah. There's stuff going on all over the show in this land that he's in, but it's like bad, evil versions of himself, Axel Gear or whatever, some kind of person kidnapping the princess of the land, and there's a big old Death Star kind of thing, but it's called a Pig Star because like there's this invading pig army that's kind of going on, and I started writing notes on the story, but it was so lengthy that I kind of abandoned it and thought that I should read the back of the box if we came to this. Do you want me to read the back of the box?
Yeah, because let's keep in mind that this is obviously like a cartoony game. Let's just suffice it. We're super impressed of how detailed this backstory is.
Yeah,
but it's too
yeah,
lengthy to read off, so we'll give you the back of the box version.
Yeah, the
right?
back of the box says, assume glasses old man position here. So, excuse me. The Black Knight and his army of psychotic robot soldiers have brought death and destruction on the once tranquil land of Elhorn. Can Sparkster defeat the wicked warlock and restore peace to his homeland once again? It's a very good question. Very good question.
Yes, it is a good question. And obviously, if I'm at the helm, no, he can't. He'll die in one of the early levels. But I'm sure you've been through it. I guess one of the things you got to mention in the game is amazing story. Actually, amazing backstory. It's beautifully made. It's like a beautiful game to look at. But probably the hook back then, more than that, was the mechanics, right? So tell us a bit about the mechanics and the way it plays, because it still stands up. It's great. So what can you do?
Yeah. Well, I mean, like the core kind of thing that he can do is the boosting abilities of his rocket pack. So like it's kind of you can kind of charge it up and zoom. You can zoom across the surface and like smash into enemies, taking them out. Or like one of the cool things he can do is he kind of ricochets off walls at angles and things, which is integral to the platforming that's going on, and it's super cool, and it's like a really nice little like feature really of the character, and it's just makes the whole thing like really quite unique. There was nothing really else like it at the time anyway, or previously. Like obviously I was talking earlier about there was a similar feature in another Konami game called Rainbow Bell Adventures, but maybe we'll come on to that later. But yeah, the flying thing, it was kind of the main.
It's well integrated, isn't it? Because it's like obviously it's a run and gun platformer, so there is platforming elements and there's shooting elements, and the rocket booster thing works for both, because like you say, it do exactly the same thing to charge it up and let it go. You can go in any like 8 directions, can't you? Like sort of diagonals and up, down, left, right, whatever. Yeah. It works as an attack, but it also works through the platforming sections, and I think it's just very smart, because it's just it's the same mechanics, the same feel, and yet so well employed in both. It's just tight design.
It was, and that is the whole thing with this game. It is a very tight game in like all the different areas of it. Really, it's just very competent, very well done to a decent standard, like just throughout and in every area of it, like graphically, musically, it's just a solid product really. So it's been fun revisiting it here. So
because I was thinking, like, I've got a copy, and you'd never know it, because as we all know, I always forget to go and get my copy out the drawer and put it on camera. But I definitely didn't have it back in the day, and I was trying to think. We definitely played it. What do you remember of it back in the day? Because it was around, but I think you had it, and I didn't have it.
Yeah, well, basically the first place I played it was at our friend Chris's, who, I mean, he was getting like a lot of games at the time, and basically I went around his house one time and he had it, and I was like watching him play and thinking like, oh, this is really cool. Like, I knew it from magazines, seeing it and stuff. And I just remember watching, he was doing the level where you kind of negotiating some platforms, and there's that big beam coming across the middle of the screen that you had to kind of duck or jump over and things like that. And I just remember being very impressed by like a lot of the effects that they were kind of using in the game, and that like Konami, they were quite good with their effects like throughout their various games. Like Castlevania on the Mega Drive, like it had a lot of good effects going on, and this game was similar to that. There was a lot of like nice little touches, and it really made the game kind of shine, really, I suppose. But that was the first place that I saw it anyway, so we played it like a little bit. Like I don't think I certainly didn't beat it back then, but then like I say, when I picked up my copy at the boot fair, like that had a good run, and actually throughout the years I've kind of found myself coming back to it. Like I particularly remember, for some reason, like I was working at this really rubbish job, but I'd like to kind of make myself feel better in the evening. I kind of had a few games going on that I would play, and it was probably about 2013, I think it was, and Rocket Knight was one of the ones that I was like playing like a ton of. Like I think it was that I played Final Fantasy VI on the SNES,
nice,
DuckTales on the NES, and Rocket Knight Adventures on the Mega Drive.
Nice
and that
mix.
was my kind of little it was a good batch of games. So kind of like it was a rubbish time, but the games made it feel like quite good memory wise, you know, like helped the
Because pretty much
situation.
summarise our whole life, to be honest.
Yeah, basically.
Pretty rubbish.
Everything
Games
sucks.
are good. Yeah.
yeah, that's it.
Thing is
Yeah,
though, like it's a good
much.
reason. The way it fit for you is often why these kind of mid-90s, both platformers and runner guns, just do keep getting played by us and by loads of people, because it's just so easy to pick up. You know, you can pick up this game, play a few levels and put it down if you want, but you just 10-20 minutes, busy lives, you can just fit them in. You know, I think there are lots of long form older games as well, but these mid-90s games that are kind of just pick up and play and it's super fast, yeah, they fit with my modern life, and so they've always found their way back in, same as you, like. But I think mine was, I played it back then, and I definitely had a strong impression of it because it played well in the mags, like you were saying. It was one of those where it had a buzz, didn't it? You know, you could tell.
Yeah.
You could always tell when the reviewers got a bit hyped about stuff, and obviously you got Mega Games badges and all that shit. But you could just tell about the way they wrote about it and how many times it would crop back up in comments and letters pages and tips and anything. If it kept coming back round, and this was one of those that would just, it had the buzz.
Yeah, and you have to bear in mind, I guess, as well, that at the time, every company was like tripping over themselves for their mascot. That they wanted their Sonic the Hedgehog, didn't they?
Yeah.
And there was so many like forgettable ones, like, you know, you had like the Bubsy and all that kind of stuff, and it was like, you know, it's like the less said about those games sometimes the better. But it was like, you know, this was one of the ones that stood proudly among the kind of upper echelon ones, you know.
Yeah, I agree.
He was I mean, because his game was so strong.
It was probably
more than the character.
It's probably like before the bit where we got really like saturated in
like
platform games, platformers and shoots and stuff. But because by the kind of Bubsy or Bubsy 2 era, it felt like we had tried everything. We tried like every mechanic, but the point is, nothing really did it like this anyway. I mean, this is like a hybrid anyway, isn't it? But it was, it's still alone at the time. I guess, and you were kind of touched on it there, and I guess the quality of it stands out. And one of the things was, back then at least, it also stood out because it was Konami. And like you'd see the name, and we would assume it was good. Like we had a very strong impression of Konami at the time. They were a real powerhouse dev back then, and the kind of, you know, from mid 80s through to mid 90s. So I mean, let me put it this way: what was good about Konami that they brought to this, and like what was our kind of, you know, what were the other games you were playing and stuff like that, and we'll kind of delve into that a little bit.
Well, I mean, Konami just had like some level of quality that was just kind of above everything. Well, not everyone, like obviously like Sega were getting good results out of things and certain other ones, but you know, Konami were kind of getting their own kind of incredible results out of the Mega Drive, which was quite interesting actually, because it's like it almost felt like they didn't even warm to it. They just went straight in and was getting good results out of it.
I was literally thinking that we were talking earlier.
Yeah.
So it's like they were late to the party, and obviously very wrapped up with Nintendo till quite late into the life, really. But
they were Nintendo darlings for like many years, weren't they?
Oh, darling. Oh, Konami, darling. Yeah. But it's true. They just came in like fully full, and obviously, they had a very experienced set of studios churning out games in the arcade and on Nintendo consoles. So in a way, it's not surprising that they would be like competent, but it's the level of polish that they landed with that polish intact, and most devs kind of had to warm up to it, like you say.
No, very much so. I mean, it's like you know, like the other games like that they had, like I mean, we were talking about it beforehand, like Tiny Toon Adventures Buster's Hidden Treasure on the Mega Drive. It was like just quality all the way through. It's like it looked good, it played good, it sounded good, and it was like, you know, then in '94 when they had Probotector and Castlevania, it was called the New Generation for us here in the UK, but like it was kind of called Bloodlines other places, but like it was like the gloss on these games, it was just like they just really shone through above like a lot of the other things that were going on, and that's was just what cemented this, like, oh, it's Konami, it's gonna be good sort of vibe that they had going on.
It was a real badge of quality, and I mean, and there were plenty of big hitters that we had loved previously before this point, I think, that were Konami. So not all of the, I'm going to rattle off a few of them just to give an impression of like where Konami was, but they definitely loomed large. I mean, I don't think it's a stretch to say we had them on, if not completely equal, but on the same plateau as Capcom, Nintendo, Sega.
Yeah,
you know,
definitely.
they were one of the very top names. So by then we'd had like Contra was in the ether. Like we would. I don't think we had like Contra 3 and, well, like you're saying,
that was on the SNES, wasn't it?
I don't think we'd played it by this point, is what I'm saying. But
it
was in the ether. Like Gradius, I would never like a big Gradius like player back then. It had come out a bit before my time and probably picked up the sequels, but games we were aware of. Contra, original Metal Gear was out. Now Snatcher we'd get shortly after this, but you know, it's probably playing it retrospectively, it's just another title we'd say we just assumed it would be good, but just to say they were still going strong. Like Parodius, Turtles, so the Turtles arcade, there was already churning out Turtles games on consoles as well, and just you know, that was a real big one. Super Castlevania, so you know, I would have had that by this point as well. And just I mean, that is an epic game, and obviously that was mine. And also Castlevania on the Game Boy, not quite as epic, bit of a pain in the arse to be honest, but still like something that was there. And I did have the Tiny Toons game on the SNES as well. I don't know whether
that was brilliant. I can't remember timing wise, but like, man, I remember we used to play that like a lot. It was so fun. What was it like? There was an American football kind of level or something, and we were doing it over and over till we got it like perfect or something.
Which is quite a thing for us, because I mean, you were a bit more dedicated than I was, but maybe I should say it's quite a thing for me. But it was like I had to get from one side of the pitch to the other, and it was maybe, I don't know, like 10 screens wide or something. And there was the enemies attacking in a pattern, and I could always replay it in my mind's eye, but it was just it controlled beautifully like this does, but it controlled beautifully and looked gorgeous. It wasn't necessarily the most imaginative platformer, but it was just a polish again, I think. But that it was just great fun. That's what I remember. It was just such a fun game, and like. That is one of the things that they encapsulated a lot in these Konami games, that, you know, it's like technically really good, but at the core of it, it's like they're really fun, well playing games as well, and that is just like all through Rocket Knight. So it's quite quite a thing they had going on. I mean, we'll come back to Konami a bit in a little while, because obviously things have changed for Konami over time, and so part of the reason we're stressed like how we felt about them back then is because really you just don't hear about them that much now. It's like Konami and Metal Gear, I suppose, is the one sort of thing going on, maybe the kind of rumours about new Silent Hill and stuff, but really they faded. It was a fair while after this game, you know, they went deep into the 90s, and probably obviously like with Silent Hill, Metal Gear, they were still a force. But they were a very different force, you know. They were. I mean, they did stay prolific, but most of the titles they made towards the later 90s are just not ones I'm familiar with. And we'll come back to them in a minute, because I think the other thing we were thinking about playing this was we did get echoes, and it's a sort of irony, but we did get echoes of Gunstar Heroes, which came out at literally the same month, wasn't it? It was definitely around the same
month
time.
I mean, at least in the UK, I mean, it was a heck of a September here, because we had Street Fighter 2 Special Champion, this is on the Mega Drive, Mortal Kombat came out, but this game, Rocket Knight Adventures, and Gunstar Heroes all in 1 month, so that's like that is quite something. That was like special.
God, it's just, I don't know whether, I'm just trying to think if there's ever been a month or, you know, couple of months that were stronger than that. But echoes, because it's sort of, we started talking just graphically, you know, Gunstar Heroes is so beautiful. It's kind of, this is fairly late Mega Drive, but it's actually probably for the UK period, it's like midlife Mega Drive, really, isn't it? But certainly, like you were saying, devs have got to grips with it, and things were starting to look very pretty by sort of 92, 93. But this looked really great. Gunstar looked really great. Obviously, it's a running gun.
Gunstar was amazing.
That's in there. But the speed of it, that was the other thing. Like, Rocket Knight is fairly simple, but it does rattle along at a real click, especially because you're always mixing up the spin attack, the rocket boost attack, and the shooting. There's loads of enemies coming out of all kinds of places, pigs catching on fire and running off the screen. All those things are kind of in Gunstar as well, very fast gameplay, like quite ultimately kind of simple blasting, but it's just manic, and the look of it, there's a kind of steampunky, robotized big mechs, pigs even.
Gunstar had I guess so. I mean, I guess Gunstar Heroes, it had so much variety, didn't it, in its gameplay as well? Which kind of was elevated it a little above this one, but but what there was in Rocket Knight was just so solid that you can't really sniff at it.
No. And that's where they diverge, because you'd say Gunstar just is almost like 3 games of Rocket Knight happening on top of each other. It's just so much busier and so much more manic and challenging, but rewarding for it. And obviously the reason we think that looks particularly interesting is the team at Treasure were ex-Konami, and so you look at things in both games and you just wonder like what sort of common roots they had. So I wouldn't necessarily say the graphics are super similar, but there's a quality to them, like to the quality of the sprite work, to the color scheme. Certainly some of the ideas, like big enemy sprites in the background jumping out to the foreground, like the pace of the game, the slickness of the game. Like, it's obviously they're both like run and gun. They're both fast. They're both very there's a bit of platforming, but it's really just there to kind of add a bit of spice, interest to the level. There's a feel to them which isn't crazily dissimilar. Like Gunstar, we were talking before, like Gunstar's got a lot more going on. It's a lot more adventurous. But you hear that, right? You feel that, right? Between the two games, there's something there's echoes of each other in them. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. Particularly for me, a lot of the bosses, I was feeling like this could be like a Gunstar Heroes boss. They're very technically proficient and impressive, what they're doing. The way they're kind of using sprites to and they kind of move in a similar way, and they're kind of quite grandiose, taking up they're quite large sprites for a Mega Drive game, I guess. Not to kind of think that it couldn't do this kind of stuff, but it was kind of impressive in a way that you didn't always see, and that's a lot of where the kind of comparison to a lot of Treasure games come in.
Definitely.
Well, also, actually, I know I referenced it earlier, but Rainbow Bell Adventures on the SNES, again, it was being made at the same time as Rocket Knight Adventures, and it had a very similar mechanic. So it's it almost was there was something in the water at this this Konami HQ. Because it was being made basically by a different team, and it was basically it was a follow up to a shoot 'em up game, but Konami thought let's get these characters and whack them into this other game. And kind of for me, because this came out 6 months after Rocket Knight, but I always kind of felt like this was the SNES's answer to this game, because this original game didn't come out on the Super Nintendo. And I sort of thought because some people refer to it as more of a cute 'em up kind of game, as they say, because it is a more colorful kind of version of it. I mean, not entirely. I mean, you can't really level too many similarities at it, but it has that kind of flying mechanic that Rocket Knight has, and you're kind of bouncing off of stuff at the different angles and things. And for me, kind of I always thought of those two games in the same kind of being in the same kind of area.
And the things we don't know how deep this stuff goes, but these teams back there, they were tiny, so all it would take is, in a team of maybe 5 or 6 core staff, they would have ancillary stuff, but it was usually sort of 2 or 3 game coders, programmers, maybe a designer, director, producer. It would only take one of these tiny teams to be working on another game and you'd really feel it come across. Remember when we were doing Streets of Rage, we were talking SWAT, and some of the like the game engine comes across, and it doesn't take much, and so. And they, you got to imagine they go over to each other's desks and have chats and whatever. And
someone's head is cheekily peeking around the door from the Pop and Twimby team, being like, "Oh that flying thing's pretty cool." It's like, let's get that in there or something.
I just have to mention before we do anything else, and obviously if you're listening, you won't have had the joy of this. But can we have one more demonstration of your QVC style showing off the games on screen? Because if you are listening, it's worth looking at YouTube just to see Dibs doing his best flogging SNES and Mega Drive game impressions. But yeah, so I mean, it's just interesting. There's enough there to wonder whether the dev team at Treasure carried over some stuff that they'd learned from Konami, and we know that Masato Mago, who started Treasure, was a main programmer on a game back in the day on the NES called Laser Invasion, and the director for that game was the same guy who directed Rocket Knight. So we know they cross over. We don't know how much or whatever, but I guess the point we're making is they both had that same kind of polish and finesse, and it was quite a fascinating duel to see them both land at the same time. And certainly although Treasure had done the McDonald's game, and so it wasn't technically their first game. This was their first branded game, their first one that was kind of announcing them to the world. And you've got to think, if you were at Konami, and the Treasure guys left because they were unhappy, weren't they? They were being forced to sort of do sequels and churn things out, and they just were dissatisfied.
Yeah, creative differences. You think they left under a cloud, and you've just got to think, you put them head to head, it's got a good battle. It's not like Gunstar sweeps the floor with Rocket Knight, but it definitely wins in my opinion. And it's it would be great to look across to your old team and go, there you go, that's what we could do when we're set free. Have some of that.
Have some of that.
This could have been yours.
So it's good. I mean, it's an interesting comparison. I don't know how deep it goes, but it's quite a useful one. And the other bit of that though is it's just starting to then think of trajectories of where Treasure went. They went straight to, they didn't release a huge amount, but they just released some stonking titles. Konami, but like we said earlier, that by no means did they peter out after this. They hadn't even at this point released the Mega CD Snatcher, which is probably the game we love them for the most. They still had loads to come, and obviously the massive franchise of Metal Kid stuff. But now, they're, for us anyway, they're nowhere. They're kind of
sad times.
And so it wasn't in the 90s, basically, the point I'm making. But what the hell happened to Konami?
Yeah.
Because the what we've just been describing, this game developer who was prolific, not just churning out huge numbers, but they making some of the biggest franchises of the mid to late 80s and into the mid 90s. And then obviously they did go on and create two of the biggest franchises on PlayStation and console gaming in Metal Gear and Silent Hill. And you just think, they were huge and they were also bloody good. And yet somewhere they've completely lost their way. So what the hell happened? Any theories?
It's like they literally just threw in the towel one day, didn't they? It was like, I mean, they were still making Castlevania games up on the DS, really good ones as well. What was that one? I think one of the last ones, Order of Ecclesia. I played through that one in its entirety, and that was just a fantastic game. And actually, you know what? They have recently released a compilation with the 3DS games on it. That's it's on the modern console, so it's well worth getting. I think it's only 20 quid as well or something, so it's really good. But but they were just making pretty decent stuff. I even quite like that Castlevania they did on the Xbox 360, the what was it called? I can't remember. There was two of them anyway. Lord of Shadows, that was it. Yeah. But no, just one day, it's just felt like they just suddenly stopped and got the pachinko bug that was going on or something like that. And it sort of just felt like it did feel like they were completely gone for a while, and then it was like, you know, they gradually started coming back because, like, you know, they kind of wanted to do another Metal Gear game, and then they started doing recently these remakes. Like, they have actually re-released a compilation of the Rocket Knight games in recent times. I think Martin had a limited run copy of one of the re-releases they've done. But it's all kind of re-releases and stuff like that nowadays, isn't it? Like, did I say that Silent Hill remake they've done recently and things like that?
Remakes, so and ironically, that is, like we said, that's what the Treasure guys were saying at the time. They didn't like. I mean, different generations, but it's true to say they're not gone. You know, they're still there, and they have got some IP that they can churn, and they still continue to make games. And obviously we touched on the kind of the later bit of their story when we did the Police Force video, the big falling out with Kojima. You know, he was the executive producer there. He had his own studio, and we don't know the details, but a lot have been kind of rumoured around the internet and stuff that they'd had this massive falling out and they treated him really badly, and he was sort of pushed out, allegedly. And he, without doubt, he was one of their big selling points by the kind of, you know, by Metal Gear Solid onwards, really, but certainly by the point he left. And so that's a big blow to them. And obviously the Metal Gear game they then went on to make, the first one without him was pretty panned, wasn't it? And that is one part of it. But I think, from what I understand, their main shift was kind of this thing. They basically just discovered mobile gaming, right? So that I think the story goes, they had some kind of success with a game called Dragon Collection, which was a kind of, I haven't played it, I haven't even seen it, I've only sort of heard about it. It was some kind of like mobile card game with a social aspect to it, and it's probably like pay to play stuff, and I don't know, but it made them like a ton of cash.
Gacha games.
It made them a ton of cash and was cheap to make, and that essentially seems to be the model they then decided on. So that was 2010, and I think by like 2015 they had a new president who has something to do with Dragon Collection, and that they just set their strategy out and said, right, that's what we're going to do. You know, mobile games is the future, and a lot of their IPs have gone to mobile and been sort of reimagined. And a bit of pachinko is in there as well.
Yeah,
but it just seems they've
Pro Evo, wasn't it? Started chasing the kind of almost gacha kind of crowd, didn't it? With the way like they suddenly, coin. It was like they made the new Pro Evo, like what's it called, eFootball, isn't it, or something? Yeah. So they give it away free, but then it's like everything, like you want to breathe in the game, you have to pay for it or something like that.
It's a free kick. Wait, not until you've bought some microtransaction.
Exactly. It's something like that. But the thing is, they completely dropped the ball with its release, because when it came out, like I did download it because I always liked PES, like back in the day, like you know, up to 5 and 6. I mean, I really love 5. I unfortunately bought the Xbox 360 version of 6, which didn't have half the modes in it of the previous generation, which I was very upset about. But so ever since then, like, you know, I've kind of only just dabbled in it because some of the versions of it were stinkers. But when eFootball came out, it was really unplayable because it was like it had a really strong like online kind of element to it. But the characters were like the players rather were like warping everywhere, and it was just like I just couldn't play it. And then I sort of thought to myself, you know what, I'll come back to it because they can't leave it like this. They're gonna have to fix it up at some point. I'll come back to it like when it's like a little bit more functional. But I kind of forgot about it really, and it's like, and FIFA was certainly no substitute in my because of one, it's EA, who I can't stand, and two, I mean, like the last FIFA I played was so rubbish I actually threw it in the bin because it sucked so bad. I think I got it free. It was terrible.
Well, and I mean, we haven't actually mentioned Pro Evo much throughout this chat, but obviously one of their other later games kind of that brought, I was a massive fan of Pro Evo from the first one on PlayStation, really. So I didn't play up ISS much on SNES and N64. I kind of tried it after getting into Pro Evo, and well, actually I think the first I think the first game on the PlayStation was still called ISS Prover, wasn't it? But anyway, from then point on, I loved that franchise, and I agree. Yeah, around that Xbox 360 era, it kind of just seemed to die off. But it was massive. Like, I don't know how the sales figures compare, but it made like over 100 million quid for Konami. It was a huge franchise. It's like always touted as one of the battles of the ages of those two franchises going head to head. Always preferred Pro Evo. But
yeah, totally.
Similar to what we're saying about Konami, it just seemed one day they were just like, oh, we've got this massively popular franchise. Do you know what?
Yeah.
Why don't we can it and just like not do it anymore? It's like,
yeah,
who would do that? It's just bizarre. But
apparently them.
Apparently
for whatever reason.
From what I've read, they're just making an absolute stack of cash doing mobile games, and so if at the end of the day, they're a company that their profit is their driver, I guess. But
yeah, it's just sad to think of what they once were, though. It's like you say, like we were saying, we were putting them up on that level of Capcom and Sega when they're at their absolute peaks and stuff, and it's just like, they were there among it, and now it's like, I mean, they have such a negative kind of like reputation now. It's like you always see, like, if people mention Konami now, everyone's like trashing them and rolling their eyes, kind of like in the comments and things like that. And it's like, unfortunately, that reputation seems to have overtaken all that good stuff from the old days.
And that's why I thought it's just really interesting to go down the route and think what happened to them, because at the point of Rocket Knight Adventures, they were flying high. I mean, they've been flying high for a decade, and were one of the big names, were renowned for their quality, certainly by ours, I would say by the magazines and stuff as well. And obviously didn't stop there. They went on to have some huge hits, and yet they've just sort of faded away. But I guess the point is they faded away for what we know them for. Like, as a company, like I've read, I don't know how recently this goes, but as a company, they're still doing well. And it's a bit of an interesting like turnaround, because you look a bit like, so Sega started out as a like pinball game manufacturer, didn't they? And like importing and exporting like mechanical arcade games with that sort of US Japan like tie up and stuff. Like Nintendo go way back, and they were like a card game manufacturer and stuff. And then Sega sort of taking it forwards. I think when they merged or were taken over by Sammy, a lot of the big names we knew went into making these sort of card games and pachinko games, and a lot of Sega's, or the Sega Sammy effort, went into other things. I guess that there's probably something about the Japanese arcade culture which we don't really get or haven't seen over here, because those things were popular. I don't think as a business choice it would have sounded bad, and maybe that's the case for Konami, but they've just faded away from our scene in a way that I just think the others just haven't, and it's just fascinating to see what happens.
And that's the thing. It's like people are now, because of the interest in their old games, it's like people have to pick up where they kind of left off. Like, the guy who made Castlevania Symphony of the Night, he went on to make Bloodstained Ritual of the Night, because of like there were people like just hankering for a new Castlevania game, and Konami just aren't budging on these things. So it's really good that someone's at least kind of trying to pick it up where they left off. But
that's an irony, though, I suppose, isn't it, that Konami in that case have been like recalcitrant, not making a sequel, and elsewhere, certainly with the Treasure Guys, that's what they were exactly accused of, saying all you're doing is churning IP, and it's like
right.
I mean, they certainly made a fair few Castlevania games, but who was it? It was the director again, Nobuya Nakazato, worked on Symphony of the Night. I think he wasn't director. I think he was a game designer, or he had some kind of role. Yeah.
What a game that is! I mean, I flipping love that one.
And isn't that amazing? I mean, obviously, like we were saying, it's still a strong period going into, what was it, 96, 97? I think 97 maybe for that. But they still made some absolute crackers. And we had after Rocket Knight, we then had our Sega CD or Mega CD release of Snatcher, obviously 6 years later after the original. But with that, then Police Noughts, and then Symphony of the Night. Other Castlevania games were still to come out after Rocket Knight. It's not just Symphony of the Night, but that was the massive standout. Metal Gear, Silent Hill, Pro Evo. Just they carried on being great. It's just fascinating that they seem to have elected to take a different turn. And in the background is just all this stuff that's said about them, which we'll only say is allegations. We don't know the truth, but just that there's this huge article in the Japanese press, 10 years ago or something, just saying that the way they treat the staff is just unbelievable. And certainly, the guy you just mentioned that went off and made this sort of Castlevania spin-off or gamer-like, and Treasure, there aren't that many examples you can point to of people we know in the industry that have left because they were so unhappy. But you've got those two and Kojima that have left Konami over the years, all kind of citing, I just can't work with these people in one way or another. So something in their corporate culture is in there too, but it would appear, but we don't know. So,
yeah, that's it.
So anyway, back to Rocket Knight for sort of closing thoughts. I mean, a cracking game. We never really fully put it down. It's always been one that's around. And
it took a little while to get appreciated, I felt, as well. It was a little bit like Gunstar Heroes. Like, when that game first came out, it kind of reviewed really well. Like when I saw it, I was blown away and wanted to, I was desperately trying to get the money together to buy my own copy and all this sort of stuff. And actually, I did get it when it was discounted to 20 quid and stuff like that, like not long after it had come out. And I was like, man, are people not appreciating this game or something? And I know it's got a really good reputation now, and it's it's up there with the big hitters, isn't it? But at the time it was a little bit kind of on the down low, and I sort of feel like Rocket Knight was a little bit like that, or maybe not at the time. I think Rocket Knight was kind of appreciated at the time, but then it kind of fell a bit into obscurity. But then kind of around maybe kind of 2010 kind of time or something like that, it started coming back again and people were rediscovering it, and I was like, oh, okay, that's good. These good games are finally kind of getting the respect they deserve, and now it's quite well appreciated, I think. Isn't it?
That is true of both of them. I mean, they were reviewed well. We had the buzz for both of them, more Gunstar Heroes maybe, but certainly we wanted to play both and felt good about it. But I do remember it the same. It was kind of like that. It wasn't one where you'd really talk about it in school. No one else out of our group seemed to know Gunstar Heroes, and I was like, this is like a huge new game title that's just landed. Man, these guys have done something amazing. That was our kind of feel, and yet everyone else just didn't really seem to know it was around. So it was I think kind of coming out probably at the same time as Mortal Kombat, there was so much hype over that game, wasn't there? And it was riding so much over the blood kind of element and fatalities and stuff. And it was I kind of felt like people were forgetting there needs to be a bit of good gameplay in these things as well, I mean, not completely write it off. I mean, I did kind of enjoy the first one and stuff, and it was all those kind of elements were kind of interesting and stuff, but there was no way that I could put that game next to Street Fighter 2 with that level of playability and stuff and think that they're in anywhere near the same universe. So it's but makes me sad. I think that I don't want to sound snobby about it, but I guess it was just a bit like there were a lot of Mega Drive owners by that point, and it's a good thing, but that didn't have it for the full breadth. They would have it for a Street Fighter, a Mortal Kombat, or for one of the sports games, because there's less here than in America maybe, but the sports games were absolutely huge for Mega Drive, and
John Madden and all that.
John Madden. I mean, and over here, FIFA, EA Hockey and stuff. There was a lot of
EA Hockey was good.
I guess you'd say casual gamers, and maybe just some of this kind of quirkier Japanese looking stuff, some things that I suppose if you're comparing the gritty, feeling a bit grown up Mortal Kombat to a colourful cartoony Rocket Knight Adventures, maybe some people just felt it didn't grab their attention, but it underappreciated at the time a little bit by the wider groups that I knew. I can't say it's the same for the whole country, whole sort of gaming population, but it felt that way. You know.
Yeah, I definitely think so. Yeah.
So appreciated now. It
Yes.
would seem. And so maybe that answers the question we always ask, but would you still play it? You know, would you happily pick it up and give it a bash?
Yeah, I mean, it stuck with me all this time. Like I was saying, like I come back to it for periods of time, like where I'm playing it quite consistently, and I can only see that kind of continuing really, because it's just such a fun game. It's, you know, it like we were saying earlier, it's strong in every area, and it just like makes a really great package for a fun video game. And yeah, I can't see me kind of not revisiting it, I suppose.
Yeah,
So,
same. I think just like if the graphics are solid and the core mechanics are strong, then games just last. You know, I can't see why a game like this would fade. You know, you can see the ones that peter out is just platformers that maybe had a gimmick but just didn't have strong fundamentals. This is a game with strong fundamentals, and the added bonus for me is this type of game, like we were saying before, this kind of game is perfect for the busy adult life. You know, it fits. I mostly play the Mega Drive titles, or all 16-bit on my little handheld emulator.
Oh yeah,
and they're just great because you can just pick them up anytime. You can use a save state to pick up where you left off. You can just 5-10 minutes of a game like this is great. So for me, there's a kind of double win for this era of games, or this sort of type of run and gun platformer stuff, because they're just such a quick win that can fit in around anything. But as a game, yeah, I'd still play it, and I still do. It's just strong.
Really strong.
Really strong. So
it's a beaut.
I'm glad you've given it a go. I wish Konami would kind of rediscover who they are, or maybe just go back to being who they were. Maybe that's what we really want. But yeah, because they were important to us, and I guess the reason we've yammered on about that quite a lot is because we missed that Konami, and it's
totally,
you know. But fair play to them if they don't want to do it. But you know, but glad we played the game. Wish we could have Konami back a little bit. Now, I believe there's a link from where we've been to where we're going. What are we playing next?
Well, who would see this one coming? But we're gonna be playing Gunstar Hero.
What a choice.
So, we've been singing its praises. We've been saying it's like the best thing since sliced bread, better than this game in fact, and everything like that. So it's time to jump back into that bad boy and see what we think, like with fresh eyes.
Well, inadvertently giving it some hype, but by sort of like feeding it into this one. Not deliberately, you know, the bits we were talking about, I think genuine connections between the two. It does make it interesting though to think, I spent a couple of weeks playing this, now go play that. Let's see if when it comes around to making the actual video, if we still like feel the same way. You'll probably be like, what the hell were we talking about 2 weeks ago?
Yeah, it's not going to be like James Pond 2, which is like, it was very, very different to what I remembered, to what we then experienced.
Let's give it a go. Oh my God, never again. So enjoyed that. Glad to play it.
Yeah. Yes. And so, well, I guess with all that being said, well, this has been great.
Smooth. It's a real head swing.